On Insightful Inspiration, Isabelle Landreville chats with a mosaic of brilliant individuals that help shape the insights industry. We live stream episodes to LinkedIn, and you can listen on all major podcast networks. Join us, and please subscribe so you won't miss our guests' insightful inspiration and hear what drives them and how they get inspired to be successful in the insights industry and beyond. Insightful Inspiration is brought to you by Sylvester & Co., an award-winning qualitative research firm with half a century of experience.
Welcome back to episode 14 of Insightful Inspiration, your go-to podcast for discovering the secrets to understanding and connecting with diverse audiences. As many are gearing up for strategic planning, what better time to think about those strategic plans that can be developed, dare I say, more strategically by using insights wisely. I'm your host, Isabelle Landreville, President and Chief Insight Seeker at Sylvester & Co., where we've been dedicated to understanding people for 5 decades. That reminds me to remind you, please feel free to comment during the live broadcast today as well. On Spotify, you can leave comments as well. Always excited to read your comments. They're always really good. They're gems, really. On to today's guest. I am thrilled to chat with Kerry-Ellen Schwartz, Director of Consumer Insights, Predictive Intelligence, and Platform Innovation at PepsiCo. She's a results-oriented, proactive professional who helps PepsiCo make decisions based on actionable insights. Get ready for an insightful and inspiring conversation yet again. Welcome to the show, Kerry-Ellen.
Hi, thank you so much.
I'm so excited we're doing this. I think the timing is just perfect. And it's a different twist. It's a different take on insights and how we use insights. I'm really happy we're having this conversation this morning. This is awesome.
Yes, very timely. I'm gearing up for strategic planning. We're doing all of our brand strategies, looking back at previous performance and gearing up for like what we can do better, what worked, what didn't work, and how to kind of set ourselves up for success. So very, very applicable timing.
Yeah, and I love how insights can be part of that and sort of setting the brand managers, brand directors, and brands all together in businesses for success moving forward. And so let's kick it off. Let me start the ball rolling, and then we'll have a chat like we always do. But how has your industry experience shaped your approach to insights-driven strategic planning?
I think, I've been in insights for like almost 20 years, and I've seen over the last 5 years, I'd say, a huge kind of shift in how insights have become more integrated into different businesses, especially on like the client side of the house where I sit at PepsiCo. When I started in insights was very much like, oh, we need a data point. Oh, we need to confirm something. What's the consumer feedback on X, Y, and Z? And it was very, tactical. Now it's very much front and center. So many more businesses are starting to integrate consumer insights into every step. It's not just marketing anymore. It's part of R&D. It's a part of supply. It's a part of sales. Really making sure that your end-to-end business strategy is consumer centric, right? Especially if you're selling directly to consumers, in CPG like I am. So what we've seen, over the past couple of years and what we've been doing, what I've been doing is making sure that like the voice of the consumer is center stage for everything. So that goes for, innovation planning, it goes for comms, it goes for, how you're setting yourself up for overall strategy, how you understand your consumer. I think our brands, very much understand consumers these days, but you have to kind of create a relationship. It has to almost be emotional, right? Like it has to be more than like, I'm selling you this thing. And so brands and companies are starting to kind of get wiser on how to utilize the data that consumers willingly give you, right? Like we live in an age where you can talk directly to your consumers daily, through social media and other different platforms. Consumers are leaving their data everywhere. If they're not talking to you directly, they could be talking about you. How do you start to kind of integrate all of that, right? You have to pick up all of those different pieces and create a story, and not only just tell a story of the consumer, but like what those implications are and like how you can start to forecast behavior and really understand where your consumer is going in the future and how to integrate that into your planning.
Mm-hmm. It seems like there's been a shift as well. Like it used to be like there was a pull and a push. So I've been in insights for about roughly 20 years, if not a little bit more, like you have. And I feel like consumer centric used to be a strategic choice. Like a company could choose to be consumer first or not. Whereas today it feels like being consumer first is vital. It's not a question of whether it's a push or pull and it's your strategy. It kind of is just what needs to be for you to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel
If
there's
you Oh,
no go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was going to say, if you don't put your consumer at the center of everything that you're doing as a business, like you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Consumers are so savvy and they have access to everything, right? And they have choice. Like if you go to the grocery store, there's hundreds of different options for like literally everything. It's not like you go to the store and there's one or two brands, maybe three brands. There's like tons of choices. Your consumer doesn't need you. You need them. So you have to kind of build that relationship and really understand them and really empathize with them and understand them in order to kind of again establish a relationship and talk to them in a way that makes sense and is authentic.
Yeah, and you keep using the word relationship. I feel like B2B businesses talked about relationship management because that seemed to be the thing, whereas it was more about selling in on the consumers or more transactional. But you're using the word relationship on the B2C side just naturally as part of your answers, as part of what you're sharing with us today. How can you like did you see a shift? Did you see what actually sparked that shift, or did you even notice that you started saying relationship instead of sales and buying as
um,
naturally?
it's very interesting to me, through pretty much my entire consumer career. I think the shift again happened as social media came on board and as more consumers started having more touch points directly to brands and directly to companies. And so it wasn't about like creating really cool ad that people talked about and it was like fun or funny or like even emotional. It was more about like, oh, we have fans and we need to talk to them and you have to cultivate them just like any other relationship, right? It's not a tactical thing. Consumers are people and they're looking for things from you as a company, as a brand. um, it's kind of your job, your duty, especially in insights, right, to cultivate that and harvest it for what it is. Like it is a relationship. It's not that deep of relationship sometimes, but consumers do rely on brands and they do expect something from brands. And more often than not these days, it's becoming, a little bit more less transactional and more like, you know, we're there for you, we're your partner. I think marketing has been sowing those seeds for years, even before social media. Like that's always been there. But now we're kind of reaping what we've sown because consumers are coming back to us and saying, like, I'm a huge fan of X, Y, and Z. Like, show me that you love me back, right? Like there's a lot of that. Like consumers are wearing branded merch, right? Like it's kind of funny, but like you see bumper stickers, you see people talk like expressing themselves through brandage
Mhm.
in ways that like, and I'm talking like, CPG brands, not like,
Yeah. No,
luxury
no,
brands,
it's
but
true. It used
like,
to be fashion and value and whatnot, but CPG is also part of it now. It's those
yeah.
brands also get that privilege or that opportunity. That from hearing you is something that you need to seize, right?
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Like I'm lucky that I get to work on some really kind of awesome brands, nostalgic brands, brands that, mean something to people. And I recall when I was working on Mountain Dew a few years ago, when people would find out that I worked on Mountain Dew, they'd be like, "Oh my God, Mountain Dew! I love Mountain Dew!" And they tell me a story about the first time they had Mountain Dew, right? And it was nostalgic and it was emotional, and they recall where they were and who gave it to them. Like, you know, it's a soda, yes. It quenches your thirst, but it means something. And when you understand that meaning as a brand, like you can really create stories and create programming and create things that your consumers like really are looking for and really appreciate. And it builds loyalty. It kind of again, it becomes something more than just I really like this soda. It means something.
Hmm. Yeah, and you've got some great brands. Like I go way back with Pepsi in Quebec and Quebec and Pepsi and so forth. And even just recently, there's so much meeting there to unpack. There's so many stories, and you're right. Everybody has a story, and it like is almost generational in some cases. It's really amazing in that sense. Exciting times for sure. If we go back to strategic planning, so I've been a quali forever. I've never done quant. I've always been sort of ethnographer at heart and always. But is there a right insight? Is there a type of insight or something that maybe, yeah, what type of insight actually help with strategic planning? How do people know that this is the right insight that I should be bringing into my strategic planning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and that comes up often, how do I differentiate this data point from an actual insight? I think, as I'm building plans, as I'm, writing reports and building decks, what I'm looking for is something that like sparks something. A lot of people say the aha moment, but for me, it's like, oh, there's a thread of something here. There's going to be broader implications that can be sewn beyond just like the consumer insight, and they can be sewn into the brand plans, into strategic planning. And it kind of, it's almost like you see it when like it when you see it, kind of a thing. And it's like, okay, this is something meaty, this is something I can actually kind of sink my teeth into. It doesn't happen often, and not not every single data point will be that thing. Sometimes it's like one or two points that can really build an implication and help build out a strategy. I think oftentimes, when we're working on reporting and we're working on insights reports, like I think we've come very accustomed to like tons of data, right? Like we have so much data, and it gets very overwhelming, and it's hard to sift through like what is all of this. So what I've started doing is just kind of thinking through like what is a data point that's actually going to change behavior of my marketing team, of my innovation team, of sales? Like what is something that's really going to make them stop and say, oh, that's different, oh, or that confirms something that we were thinking about doing, we need to do it. So, and again, it could be one or two points out of a whole research study, and that's okay. Not everything is going to be like this huge crazy implication, but it's those data points that really make you stop and say like, wait, there's something here, let me dig into this a little bit deeper. So that's how I differentiate like data from like a true um, impactful insight.
I feel like that's where the art form to our job sort of sits in and seeps in this notion. Like I remember doing huge innovation pipeline thing, a lot of focus groups, and we went to New York just because they've seen it all. So I mean, New York is always versus Jersey or somewhere else. I mean, they see you coming to
Yeah,
say it nicely. And it only took one person in the second group to say one thing, and everybody went, I think we need to stop working on this. We need to pivot. And we like pulled the plug, and then we just sometimes, but there's an art to, and how, I don't know if you can share an example or whatnot, because I know there's a lot of secrets in what we do, but is how can you tell, like you can tell and the implications and whatnot, but yeah, how can you tell if it's a tiny thing versus a big one? Like what helps you to sort of have that art form? Is it context? Is it knowing the business? Is it knowing your marketers? Like what sets you up for success that so that you can fulfill that sort of art form and know why this
yeah.
is that you should actually take it into strategic planning or not?
I think, well, first off, if you're working on anything related to strategy and planning, you should know your business cold. You should know your audience.
Okay.
You should never go in blind. That's
Yeah. So check context, yes, matters. Okay,
yes,
check.
yes. But you should, yeah. But when I say know your business cold, you should know more than just what the marketers have shared with you. Like you should know what sales is dealing with. You should know what field is dealing with. You should know what the merchandiser is dealing with. Like you as the insights person have like a responsibility to kind of think beyond just marketing, right? Like oftentimes like insights departments sit within marketing. Those are our who we collaborate with and report into. Um, and what we do is in service and support of them. But I'd say more often than not, like our role is bigger than just marketing. It's bigger than just reporting on the consumer or some behavior or all of those things. Like our job is to pull everything apart. That's the kind of art and science of it, is like you look through all this data, but if you know what's going on in all parts of your business, and supply is dealing with this thing, and you know sales is dealing with this other thing, you can start to kind of piece together like, oh, this will change, like this data point or this story that you've crafted from all your research impacts everyone, right? And that's where you kind of stop and you can say like, oh, okay, this is fully what will kind of be really impactful. Of course, we want things to be impactful for our marketing counterparts, but again, if we're talking about strategic planning, it goes beyond that. And sometimes you have to have tough conversations with your marketers and you have to push back, right? You have to say, actually, no, the consumer's not going to accept that. Or actually, I don't think this is going to work because I know the consumer cold and I know X, Y, and Z will happen if you do that. And you have to be very frank and honest and transparent with them. And I think they appreciate that. Sometimes those conversations can be a little tricky and you'll have to navigate. But again, if we're talking about strategy, it's more than just marketing, right? It's everything. And it's like how you pull everything together in order to set the brand up, set whatever it is you're doing up for success. And it just takes knowledge and it takes like internal networking. Like again, you know your marketers, but you should know who your marketers are talking to. You should know all of the different pieces that come in to build that brand.
Yeah. And so it's like being a researcher within your own ecosystem.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like it really like, take the skills that you use with consumers, but then sometimes you got to
Flip
use them
it.
on your
Yeah.
colleagues, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've been mentoring quite a bit over my career in the last decade, especially. And I would say, you write a mod guide or moderating guide when you do an IDI or you do ethnography or a focus group or something. Maybe you should start getting one done when you go to that kickoff meeting. To see beyond the brief. And so using those skills sort of and flipping them internally to make sure that you do get a sense of the context and whatnot. And sometimes it is, I guess you're in on it and you're sort of swimming on it. So like living the ecosystem on a daily basis.
yeah.
When an external partner comes in, sometimes I'm like, okay, I like repeat business for that because we know more and we can build. But sometimes you're coming in and you've got something new and you're like, okay, tell me everything. Like give me homework. Tell me everything I need to know. I've signed all the paperwork. I can't, still secret. Just download everything. So there's a lot of research that comes before doing research. With that,
Yeah. Like think about like a lot of like the innovation work that I do, we always start out with like internal expert interviews, right? Like it's all about again understanding what other parts of the business are dealing with and what they're expecting from a new innovation and what white space means to them and things like that. Like because that really like if you absorb all of that knowledge and absorb all of those different things, it really shifts how you set up your research project and it sets up what kind of questions you're going to ask consumers and what you're going to ideate against. Like you need all the variables. Like we're researchers. And I like to personally, I am a huge nerd and I love information and I'm very curious about just like everything. So I'm always looking stuff up. So I take this opportunity whenever I start off a new project, like to reach out to my colleagues who I don't interact with on a day-to-day basis outside of marketing and say like, hey, what is it that you do? What do you think we could be doing
yeah,
differently? Tell me everything. Like just, fire everything at me. Give me all the background. I want to read through everything. I want to know what your problems are. Like we can all kind of get on the same page and try to solve all this stuff together. And it's just you have to have a very like knack for curiosity in order to kind of I think really be successful in insights.
yeah. And I feel like it's not a switch that you turn off. Like my husband is really funny because he's never known me doing something else, and so he can always tell what's my next project by what comes in through the grocery store and what's in the fridge. He's like, okay, this is what we're doing for the next like 6, 8, 12 weeks. I'm like, yep, okay, you're on to me. So, and then I go to different countries and I travel, and then my family knows that I look at grocery stores like museums.
Yes.
And
Yes. I
everybody,
do the same thing.
even my son now, he's like, okay, which grocery stores are we hitting this time? Like I've been to Germany and whatnot. I just came back from a family vacation in California for a few weeks. And I think we did so many different sort of farmers markets and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And my son was like, okay, can we visit like something else? Like, I'm like, sure, we can visit a real
Yeah.
I think he was 6 at one point. He said, "Can we visit a real museum? I think that's a thing."
It's funny,
um,
like, my kids do the same thing, like, my son is like, "You spend so much time in the grocery store, like, you don't even buy anything half the time, you're just looking at all the new stuff," and I'm like, "Well, it's my job, like, I need to know what my
yeah,
competitors are launching, I need to know, like." And the worst is my son's going into 6th grade, and, like, preteen, teenage boys are, like, a wealth of knowledge, right? Like, I just when I go to school, I'm like I ask them, like, "Hey, what snacks are you guys into? Like, what's your favorite new drink? Like, tell me everything." Like, I need to know, like, what excites you, and I'm always looking for opportunities for, like, IDIs and,
yeah.
just say, like, hear, like, on the street, like, what's actually, true. Like, I read stuff and I, see all the data,
Mhm.
but it means so much more when you actually see it in action.
Yeah, as a researcher, being a parent is so much fun. It's like the best longitudinal study ever. Plus, it gives you that pulse check on trends. That is just amazing. Yeah, and so aside from being parents and researchers as parents, are there some other methodologies that, when it comes to finding those right insights for strategic planning, that you just found that are so successful, really set you and your team up for success?
Yeah, I personally, I love qualitative. I deal with a lot of quantitative data, but sometimes um, it nothing is more like insightful than understanding like actual consumer nuance than like being in their home, being in their kitchen, doing a 3-hour ethnography with a consumer and kind of walking through their pantry and their refrigerator and seeing what's in their cabinet. Because that's when you can really see the nuance that is people. And like I was doing a study on like meal occasions a few weeks ago, and we had a woman who was like, "I'm very healthy, I'm super um into organic food," and like very like all of the stuff you would kind of check the box
Yeah.
for someone who's like super health conscious and forward. We get
Mhm.
to her house and she has some of that stuff, but she also has all the snacks, all the chips, all the
Yeah.
cookies, all the soda. It's all kind of shoved in a corner, kind of like hidden in a way. And we're like, okay, tell us about that. Like, that didn't come up when we were doing our screening. Like, what does that all mean? And she's like, well, I can do, the organic healthy thing, 90% of the time, but there's times where I have a bad day, or I'm going through something, or I'm, having people over and need I need the crowd pleasers. And like that's the insight, right? That's where you're like, oh, okay, these things mean something to people. It it lifts them up. There's a sense of joy. There's a sense of community when they have these out and they can show their friends or whatever. Like those are the things that um, are really like what I want my marketing colleagues and whomever is involved in the study to walk away with. Like we talk about consumers, and I try to, as much as I can, talk about the human and the human centricity piece of it. But it's not until you actually see like true human behavior, almost like
Yeah.
we're in a zoo, that it really starts
Yeah.
to mean something. And I think oftentimes, um, like we're in it day to day, our marketers are into it day to day. They completely forget that they're also people and they're also consumers and they're also shoppers, and like they do all these same things, but there's some sort of barrier where you can't like apply like what you do at home to like what other people are doing, even though it's like a
Yeah.
very similar behavior. And so it's just that's so grounding to me. And so I would never lose qualitative um for quantitative, because you don't get those kind of rich insights. You
Yeah.
can back it up with the quant, but you really need to see and hear those observations.
And I love how there's this notion of when you do qual and you set yourself up to create those learning opportunities, you do get what they say versus what they do. And the tension between, or the disparities between the two, is really where you want to unpack, and that's really where the insights are. Because I've had the same thing happen to me where people are saying, no, I never have candy. There's no candy in my house. No, no, no. Focus group. And then we were recruiting from the focus group to double click on a few people to sort of go home with them just for that setup. And there's different ways of doing it, but that was the one way. And then we show up to this lady. He was like just saying, no, 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 no candy, no nothing. And then literally there was candy in every single her house. There was candy in the bathroom. And she lived on her own.
Wow.
There was candy. There was one piece of candy, like a small bag. She had homemade candy, toffee. She had it everywhere. And every time
Wow.
she's like, "Oh, I didn't know." She just unconsciously was having at least 20 pieces a day,
Wow.
which I
That's
thought was
crazy.
fabulous. Yeah, which
Get
happens
relatable.
completely. I mean, and then I always like also to do when it comes to snacking, I really like doing their home and their car. For some
Yes.
reason, there's
Yes.
I love sitting, especially moms. I love sitting in their car. Like if you've got a
I
minivan, I want in it.
Yeah.
I want to see
There's
your
snacks
view.
everywhere. I
Like
have snacks
and
hidden
organize
all
it.
over my car, right? Like I think it's a very natural, maybe mom behavior, parent behavior. But those are the things that like you don't get from quant, right? Like you hear, 20% of people don't eat candy. And like that doesn't feel true.
And
Like,
I
until
think
you
there
see it.
also exactly, and I think there's also something. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like there's something about you've got data. It speaks to your head rationally. You're saying this is the right thing to do. Blah blah blah. And then you meet people and you go, we're talking about relationship and building a relationship between the brand and the consumer. But I think it's also, it builds a relationship with the insight. If you're human to human kind of engaging with the insight, seeing it or hearing it from the horse's mouth. I hate the expression, but it is what it is. There's something about witnessing it and seeing it and hearing it firsthand that also sometimes sparks something that you go, okay, this is real. This is true. It builds a relationship with the insight, with the information, with the story. And I feel that is sometimes more empowering because it speaks to all your brains versus just like a rational sort of data point. How do you feel about that? What's your POV on that?
Yeah, I think, like I said, quant data is great and you need it, right? Like, is it helps confirm things and it kind of gives you a sense of sway where things are going and all of those things. But there's just there's just more, like qualitative brings your quant to life. That's kind of how I always picture it. I love an opportunity to bring an actual consumer in front of an executive. Like
Mhm.
that's like, my favorite thing ever because executives they're always ingesting a ton of information, a ton of data, and they're hearing a lot of things. And they don't often get the opportunity to kind of sit one on one with the consumer. And
Mhm.
so whenever I have an opportunity to say like, hey, this is a brand fan and they're going to talk to you about how they feel, and consumers are brutally honest, and
Yeah.
they will tell you how they feel, and like that's so rewarding. And oftentimes I've done this recently when I had a panel of consumers come in after I had given um, a report share out, and the consumers confirms, basically all the quant data, but they built upon it, right? They were able to explain, why they're having, this issue, or what this issue means to them, or what they wish the brand would do instead. And
Mhm.
like sometimes you like you just said, from the horse's mouth, like executives and marketers need to hear directly from consumers sometimes, whether it's through a video or just bringing them right into the
Yeah.
office. Like it's so much more real when you can hear that confirmation directly,
Mhm.
and it just comes to life, like literally, like that person standing right in front of you and saying, yeah, this thing sucks, I don't like it,
Mhm.
why did you guys make that decision, I wouldn't have done that. It again, it brings all of that quant learning to a place that's like much more impactful and spurs action. Oftentimes, like after I've shown a video or had a consumer come in, right after, the presentation is wrapped, all the chatter is like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this
Mm.
was so deep or so real, because it's just a number on a page.
Yeah.
more often than not, and so it becomes more tangible and becomes more important and something they really want to solve for.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Because I mean, I've had discussions with people where I'm like, oh, let's bring a panel in, let's do a workshop after, or maybe we do video. And people are saying, we don't have time, they don't have time, it has to be shorter. The report ends up being 1 page. And I totally get that. But how, if it's something that you feel so rewarded by, that you clearly believe in, how do you make it work? That is to get executives in front of consumers
So
successfully.
this is where, like I said earlier, networking comes really in handy. I think if you've built a relationship, and this is, not just me, but like my whole team and my leadership that I report into um, takes insights very seriously, and they fully believe in all of that, and really truly believe, like, of kind of cultivating that relationship with consumers and making that more real for our marketers and for the rest of the business. And so you just have to kind of work within your system and kind of push it. You have to kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and just say, sometimes it starts off like, let's just try this thing, see if it works. If it doesn't, it'll go away. But it usually doesn't, because it's usually successful. And I've done consumer panels at, like, my current position, previous roles, previous companies. Like, I have never seen it, like, not work, to be honest. It can be kind of scary because you can't control a consumer, right? You can't control what's going to come out of their mouths. But that's okay. Like, again, it's all about making sure the executives feel like, oh, this is what's, like, really going on with my brand, with my business,
Hmm.
and hearing directly from them. It takes work, and it takes a lot of, like, pushing and saying, like, you have to start small. Sometimes you do a bunch of videos and you create a film and say, like, hey, we can just bring consumers in and it's not a big deal. And you find the time, it's an hour. You build it into your report presentation. If it's, your report's 20 minutes, you save 20 minutes for this discussion, and then you save 10 minutes for talking through it after everything's wrapped up. Like, you just have to kind of push,
Hmm.
um, and just have faith in yourself and your work. It is hard. It is scary. Like, won't downplay that at all, but it's so much more rewarding
Hmm.
when you see people in the room, executives in the room, like, really light up and go, oh, they get it, right? Like, they get what you get every day when you're reading through the data and, listening to consumers. Like, that light switch turns on in their heads, and you
Yeah.
can see it on their faces.
Yeah. I've even sort of had the opportunity of doing even focus groups during board meetings, which I thought was
That's
really interesting.
awesome.
Really bringing in the consumers and building a consumer panel for the board of directors and those meetings, which I thought was really interesting. It's like next level if the board directors are actually, and they stay on. Like, usually they're like, okay, we'll do like a 1 hour thing. We'll tune in for blah, blah, blah. And they usually have to shift the agenda because they stay tuned.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, it's
There's
so rewarding.
It is. There's something about it that feels more real. And I think it goes back to how we learn. Like we always say at Sylvester, I always say, how do you want to learn? Like one of the questions that I ask people as we're briefing, I'm like, what kind of learning journey would you like? How do you learn? Are you a visual learner? Do you have to like play it out? Do you have to read for it? Like what kind of learner are you? And it's really interesting, goes back to, and maybe you can relate to this, but I'll use my son. I can tell my son, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And then it's never going to work. He's got to do it. And then he'll do it. And then I'm like, and that's what I was telling you about. And then he knows. There's something about experiencing it firsthand sometimes that goes, okay. And then I go.
You get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, especially with kids, right? Sometimes you have to kind of, it's not gonna work or they're gonna fail or something, like,
Yeah.
but you have to let go and just be like, "Okay, whatever, you'll figure it out." But I think, like, starting with that question, like, "How do you like to learn?" is so important, and so, um, like, I have never asked anyone that, but I think I'll start, because that's really interesting, and I really like that approach.
Yeah, it works really well to get a sense, if I may, of your target audience as well and how to report your deck. I work with so many different corporate cultures and different teams. And so they don't they don't use the same template. They don't have, like, some will have hubs versus this versus more creative, very more, so
Yeah.
much more. Like, I can't read anything if you have a comma instead of a semicolon. Okay, so let's make sure we get that, triple, proofread before we actually tell
Yeah.
the story, because you won't be able to see the stories if you're just looking at the semicolons and, commas. I think it's also part of understanding the culture and how people are and what actually works for them. I feel like there's a huge teaching part of our job. Like
Oh
a,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
like never
It
ending teachers or something.
Yeah, like I joke, one person on my team, he's just so smart and like we all call him the professor just because like he he knows so much, but then also he explains it really well too. So like,
Mhm.
and he is like a professor, like he's just so full of knowledge. And I think a lot of us who really thrive in insights are kind of driven that way. Like we have a natural curiosity, we have a natural kind of, I'm not say personality, but the kind of people who like just want to experience things and want to learn as much as possible and then share that learning. So I think that's our job, right? Is to
Yeah.
share what we hear back to our teams in a way that again is
Hmm.
impactful to them. Like, and I think, going back to our question earlier on like what a right insight is, it like the differentiation between data and an insight is really like if it's going to change something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just facts. Like you
Mhm.
know so much about Gen Z
Yeah.
or boomers or something. Like yeah, those are facts. But like, what are the pieces of information about those cohorts that are
Mm.
actually going to change how I do my strategic planning or how I set my business up or how we go to market. What are those things that are actually going to shift something? And that's what we as researchers have to do and then have to share that knowledge in a way that like again like our audiences understand it and get it and really
Yeah.
grasp what we mean.
Yeah. It brings me back to, I think, when I was learning 20 years ago, probably with my thesis director, learning how to write a good report. And he kept on saying, why, if I play client, why should I care about this?
Yes.
And every
Yes.
single slide title, sort of headline, whatnot, it was always, so it wasn't the what, so what, now what type of thing. It was like, why should I care about this? Why does this matter? Why do I need to actually spend time learning about this and listening about this? Which I thought was, in my 20s, quite tough as a question to be asked every single slide. Why do I care? Why should I care? But it made me better, and it made me better at not changing the insight, but sort of working the priorities and understanding what's a fact versus what's a real insight, and sort of separating the weeds to make sure that, letting things bubble up, and sort of, I think, probably cultivating that art that we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have to having that kind of why question in your head. I mean, that's how I frame up my outlines when I start writing a report. Like,
Mm,
why do they need to know this? Why is this important? What is it going to do?
yeah.
Versus kind of how I was taught way back when is what you just alluded to. Like, what is it? So what? What's next? Like, that's still a story, but
Yeah.
it's not the right story.
Well, sometimes it makes for a really long deck as well, and no one
Yes.
reads anymore. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
noticed.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
my detailed findings, I should just rename them appendix. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the struggle that I think a lot of us in the industry are going through right now is like we've we just need like give me 90 seconds of
yeah.
why I should
What's
care
your,
about any of this. Give me
yeah.
one infographic, one slide, which I think is great. Like I think it opens up, more conversation, but then at the same time, I think we as an industry haven't adapted well. Like we still want to ask every single question in
Yeah.
a questionnaire and get all the data because we're data nerds and we love it.
Yeah.
But then we spend so much more time like cutting a lot of stuff and it makes it harder to find those things that are impactful. So we have to start with the right question first before we even
Yeah.
go to consumers.
And sometimes you need to ask the question in order to know if there's something there or not. Sometimes you
Yeah.
still, yeah, it doesn't mean you're asking the question, that you're reporting back on the question. I think
Yeah.
there's
And not
also
everything has
that.
to be
Yeah.
reported. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part is unlearning a lot of that behavior. And I started on the vendor side, so I was just like, here's everything.
Hmm.
But over the years, like since I've shifted onto the client side, I'm like, I don't want all of this. Like I need, how do we cut this back? How do we make sure like we're actually sharing out the things that really matter? I remember when I first started like delivering decks that were like 100 slides, 150 slides. And even at the time I was like, there's no way anyone is reading this. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But I was, in my early 20s and I was like, whatever, this is what they
Yeah.
paid for, I'll do it.
Mhm.
But it has taken quite a while for me to unlearn like all the data dumping. Like that is not
Yeah.
helpful.
And I think it's interesting because, there's also this time crunch in our industry, which is faster, cheaper, faster, but faster
Yeah.
essentially. But I feel like if you actually are good at the art form and knowing what they should care about, what really matters to serve share in terms of knowledge and insights, then it is shorter to pull that deck together. It is shorter to actually build that story afterwards because you can quickly figure out what you need to report back on it. Because doing 100 slides takes a ton of time.
Forever.
So it
Takes
actually
forever.
shorts, it makes the research better, the output better, but it also shortens time frames, which you
Yeah.
can go faster, but increase the meaning. You don't have to go necessarily cheaper. You can increase the meaning and still do it faster. It's just, how you go about it, I think.
So like kind of around kind of in that same vein, like what have you seen within the industry that is shifting to kind of reflect the reality of how clients are actually using reports? I mean, there's DIY tools and there's all these different things now and like social listening and all that stuff. But like, do you think there's kind of where do you think the industry is going in the future, given all the changes in technology and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So the company I own is 55 years old. I am not. I'm very proud to say I'm only 42. But and I've been at this for 25 years, and it's really interesting how we were one of the first ones to go online to do like a bulletin board focus groups. Like we've always been like ahead, and it's interesting how these days innovation, in my mind, feels like we're circling back to making things even more human. It's
Yeah.
like everything been digital and we're doing this and this feels very human, and but it still doesn't beat this notion of you and I sitting side by side having tea or coffee or whatever or drink. I think there's still that human aspect that comes back. So I think we're using different communication tools. I think a lot of the innovation and where the thinking comes back from a qual standpoint is okay, well, let's figure out what really matters. And so a few shifts that I've basically done is I think that I don't just run with an RFP anymore. I make sure we have a kickoff. I make sure we ask questions. I make sure to ask more documents, to get a download, to actually show up and even do even like a mirror board or a workshop before we do the research.
Yeah.
I think there's that. I do think also there's a lot more touch points because we're doing things virtually. People are not are not hit with the insights the same way if you do things virtually. So I think there's always a mirror board. There's always these huddles. There's always, because there's extra probes, there's, every consumer touch point or engagement point, whether it be a focus group, an IDI, an ethnography, a day of BBFG, a day of journaling or whatnot, always you go, oh, now we've learned this. Oh, but now I want to know about this. And I think there's also this big, huge aspect of our job now, which is, okay, but yes, we can do that because, just corporately we say, yes, what was the question to our clients? But I mean, there's also this, okay, yes, but that's going to take our research into a different sphere. Is that what we want? So I think I'm facilitating client workshops throughout. So I feel like my job is now two things: fielding, but also facilitating the knowledge harvesting. So there's like a learning journey that's happening parallel to the research and the field work. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of engagement, so to make sure that every point we know what matters, we know what they care about, we know how they learn, we know also more context because we're not fulfilling our own curiosity. We're fulfilling our clients, like your curiosity. And so we really need to know, and you can't download everything. We're human. At one point, we're like, oh, that sparked something. I'm like, what does that spark? Why is that important to you? And then we keep doing it. So at the end of the day, when you get to the debrief, nothing's a surprise because we've learned together. Everybody kind of knows. And the deck is usually like 5-10 slides, and then it's got a lot of video in it. We've done video for like 10 years. And so video is not, oh, more than that. Video is not a new thing. Like we started doing videos on iPods. Like I convinced clients to use iPod touches as incentives so that we could send them before they did their research to clients.
That's so smart.
Participants, so they could film. There was one respondent that lost their iPod Touch in a roller coaster ride because that was part of kind of how they defined fun. The study was about, bring to life your moments of fun. So we had to replace one. But then our in-house ethnographic film team then had standardized video, but this was back in 2010. So this is when people still have flip phones, their data wasn't great. So we had to pay for people's data points. We had to do Wi-Fi on cell phones. So today, super easy. It's super easy. So we have reels. We always have videos, especially in the executive summary. Not so much the detail finding. I'm like, read the quotes and the detail findings, watch the quotes and watch the videos in the executive summary, because that's where you get the executives. So I think those are some of the things that we're seeing. And I think just, how our moderators need to do this so much more than actually focus groups and different things like that. So I think there's also this notion that now we have moderating studios so that our moderators are okay and they're comfortable sitting down all day moderating in front of a like I'm right now on a 32-inch screen. Like there's things like that we've done also to make sure that we're at our best using technology to connect with people. But I still really, really like just, sitting down at a bar or inviting people, or just like what we used to do, or like Reckitt and like waxing parties and stuff like that. Like I still very much love those. So I think there's still a role for that, but I think people are so comfortable sharing in so many other ways that it's fine these days. You can still build rapport this way.
I've used like not only just actual like research that I've paid for and kind of gotten videos, but I actually just a lot of times like I did a report where I like went through TikTok and I just like people are sharing this stuff and it's like still relevant to what I was like, my point I was making, but there's so much like, again, consumers are leaving data everywhere. We all are. We can pick some of that up as well and kind of use it, if it helps enhance things. One thing I'm still trying to find within our industry is I feel I'm a huge like documentary nerd and I love documentaries. I'm surprised there isn't a firm that does report outs as like short documentaries, like 15 minutes where you just get everything and it's produced the way, like a Netflix or documentary or something is. Like that's what I'm still waiting for. Like I'm like that would be perfect for me because like I'm a visual learner. I love hearing things. I love seeing the consumers directly. Like our industry is so ripe for something like that, and I'm surprised that it hasn't taken off.
Well, we actually do it. We've done it for a really long time. We've even so there's, I think today the other thing we're seeing is that people don't consume content the same way. So I think yes, TikTok and whatnot, but I think so. For example, we had to bring to life a segmentation, which is like classic qual, right? Bringing to life a segmentation.
I love that. That's my favorite thing.
We literally created a podcast channel with voices and audio recorded, like the personas. So you literally, for each segment, and each persona, you have someone going on, you can listen, they have their podcast channel and they have little tiny bits that are audio recorded with their own tone of voice, their own voice that actually mirrors their persona, and they actually talk about it. So instead of having those slides, that you can still have posters and slides about like you have a podcast channel where you can actually listen to them. So executives were like driving into work, listening to it. So I think we're being smart about like doing cue cards, doing posters, doing magazines. Like I think there's a whole publication side of how we actually distill the information and how we produce content. So I think that's the other thing. So we've done videos a lot, but I do think there's now But sometimes it takes a bit more time, a different approach. But if you do want a video documentary, if you want a game out of it, if you want a workshop out of it, if you want a podcast channel out of it, there's ways of doing it. And I think that's where our in-house film team just strives and gets really excited about it, because that's what they do. And then like the podcast channel was awesome because the executives were like driving into work listening.
See, that's amazing, because when we talk about impact and all of that, like that's what we're looking for, I think, and that's what we're kind of driving towards. Like we're so used to decks and PowerPoint and presentations. Like it's almost to the point where like you sit through a bunch of, even when we do strategy planning, like it's just presentations on stuff, right? But like there's something so much more real when you can like interact with it in some way, or you can have a consumer come in. Like that's what I think differentiates like a report into something much more impactful, when
And
you
then
can actually
everybody
kind of
wants to
touch it.
listen. Yeah, and
Yeah,
everybody wants to
exactly.
listen. Even the
And they want to
person
know.
everybody knows, and then it's easy to socialize because it then makes the insights very accessible to everyone.
Yes.
You don't have to know about the art and science. You don't need to figure out, oh, this is what that means based on what I'm hearing. It works. It's easy to socialize, and fun to socialize. But yeah, we can definitely keep talking about that. I think that
I love it.
that would be amazing. Okay, I want to be mindful of your time. So we could keep every time I do this, I'm like, I could keep talking for like another hour or not. And I always say we have to go back. We have to have coffee. We have to do that. But I think just in the interest of time, I would love to do the French twist.
Yes.
Which I think everybody knows about it now because I speak French, and so there's a bit of a French twist to everything I do. Usually there's a scarf involved, but it's too hot today. There's no scarf. So drawing inspiration from Bernard Pivot's Bouillon Couture or James Lipton's Actor Studio. And no, I will not ask you what your favorite swear word is. But because this is all about sparking inspiration and sort of getting people to move forward, regardless of what that is, let me ask you the one question I love, which is, what other profession than your own would you love to attempt or would try to attempt?
A detective. I
Really?
think, yeah. Like I love, again, curiosity, but I also like solving things, and I read a lot of like mystery books, and I would love to try it. I don't think I could do it very well, but I think I could try it.
Yeah.
That's the one job where like I don't know any detectives. I don't know anyone in law enforcement personally, but I think that would be the one thing. And I never, even as a kid, I never wanted to be a detective or anything like that. But it's only recently where I'm like, I could probably try it and see how I do.
I feel like I've always wanted to be Olivia on like Law and Order or something, or like
I love Law and Order. She's like my inspiration.
I've seen every single episode, to the extent that at one point there was a court of law in the States, and it was, on TV, and the witness said, but she drew inspiration from a Law and Order episode, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, there was just out of context. I'm like, no, that's not right. There was never a Law and Order episode on that. And I was right.
Yeah, that I have the same thing. I have seen all the Law and Orders. I love the old ones from like the 90s. Huge, Law and Order SVU fan. Like I could go on about
Okay. We need to expand on that one too. What is your favorite word?
Favorite word is empathy. That's my favorite word.
Has it always been your favorite word?
Probably no. In the last 5 or 6 years, I'd say. It's an important word that I think we've forgotten what empathy is, like, as a society. So I think it's really important for us to kind of re-ground ourselves and start leading with empathy.
Yeah, I think we have. My freedom stops where yours starts. I think there's something about, we're very, very, very self-connected. Yeah. What is your least favorite word?
So I have a least favorite phrase, which is "What's for dinner?" My kids bombard me with that every day when they come home, and usually I have nothing prepared, and I'm like, I don't know. Please stop asking me. It's my trigger word. I don't like it. My trigger phrase.
I can totally relate to that. Wait until he's like 14, and then he can actually like feed himself. There's light at the end of the tunnel, I promise.
It's good to know.
Yeah, there's hope. There's hope.
I'll be prepared.
And what is the best thing a mentor has sort of imparted on you or shared with you that still to this day sort of guides you?
Yeah. I don't know if it's a thing a mentor said or did. It was more like just their whole way of being. I had a mentor who was one of my leaders, and he was just so, again, empathetic, but like he was just so grounded and real and transparent and never sugarcoated anything. And I really appreciated that. Like, this was actually a few years ago, like during COVID, and he was very frank on like, things suck right now, and this is how things have to be. But he was very still empathetic to like what we were all dealing with, day to day in our personal lives, and like really understood like some of us have kids and things are kind of crazy at home and all of that. Like he just understood people really well, and it just made him a really great effective leader. And as I've kind of progressed in my career, I've always made sure like to understand my coworkers, understand where they're coming from, again, lead with empathy, and even like understanding like our executives, like their days are hectic, their days are crazy, they're being bombarded with information. Now you have to present something to them and give them more information. How can you again make it impactful by understanding,
Yeah.
where they're coming from? So I think those are all just like the most important skills anyone has ever imparted on me.
Yeah, I was like a good pop culture reference too, just because it makes people laugh. If people laugh, then you've got them. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I was like the
I
classic
love
one.
that.
The Pepsi, the Canadian team in Pepsi knows. So Julie and I always say, "You haven't heard a number in about like 50 minutes. Are you okay? I can tell you the temperature outdoors. So the weather today is." And then, "Are you feeling better now?" Like it's always been like the classic quality kind of joke. Yeah. Okay,
They need
Carrie, this,
something.
yeah, exactly. Carrie, this was simply amazing. Thank you for sharing so much. Thank you for being so open with us. And for sure, let's keep the conversation going. I'd love to actually have that coffee, that tea with you. I
Yes,
think that would be,
definitely.
yes, there's nothing like a side by side conversation. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I think that would
Well,
be,
thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. Nice break to my day to talk about insights, but not talk about all the insights. So I really, really appreciate it.
of course, of course. Amazing. Okay, people, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This was another yet episode, a very insightful episode of episode 15. Geez, it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. So stay tuned for episode 15. We are coming up soon. Please do subscribe. Please keep on tuning in. And hopefully we sparked inspiration. That is the goal of this. Thank you and have a good day. And I will have another